Hello and welcome back to the Work Well podcast. Today in the show, I'm delighted to welcome Toni Nestor. Toni is Head of People Engagement, Customer Services at AIB. Toni's had a varied career in AIB and she worked mainly in operations areas managing large teams. Now as Head of People Engagement in the Customer Services division, one of her key areas of responsibility is driving the wellbeing agenda for a diverse, multi-location workforce of over 1,000 staff. Toni chairs the AIB Wellbeing Governance Council, who decide the areas of wellbeing that AIB focuses on. Toni is responsible for ensuring that the AIB Wellbeing Advocates, of which there are over 100, are fully aware of all wellbeing initiatives. Sit back and enjoy my conversation with Toni Nestor. Toni, hello and welcome to the Work Well podcast.
Thanks very much, Ryan. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. So how are you? How have the last few months been for you and your work and your home life?
Yeah, a bit strange, I suppose, which is probably something that everybody is saying. And I think little did we all know back in March when we listened to Leah Varadkar from Washington telling us that the country was closing down, that we would be entering into our second lockdown. But I suppose for me, as I said, it has been a bit strange. I'm working from home the majority of the time. I do have the opportunity to go into the office now and again, which is nice. And it allows me, I suppose, to interact with different people. I think one of the things that I'm finding awfully difficult at the minute is the lack of conversation outside of COVID. And when you do meet different people, you have different stories, and that kind of has given me a bit of energy. I suppose from my side, I was here at the dining room table for the majority of the time. My husband was in the kitchen and my son was attempting to study for his leaving cert until it was cancelled. So it was difficult us all being in the house all of the time. But we've gotten used to it. My son is now in college remotely. I have set up my own office upstairs in the box room, and my husband is going to work most days. So there is a little bit of routine there now, which is great.
Excellent. Yeah, you certainly adapted there by the sounds of it. And you certainly had it all going on there, especially with the leaving cert student. That must have been particularly challenging.
It was, right. Yeah. And I think of all of the groups, I think that are affected by this, I really do feel sorry for that age group. For the likes of you and me, we can rationalize things. We've got certain life experiences, but they've missed out on a lot. They miss their friends, they miss that social interaction, and it's a huge learning at that age. And it's a big way of how you form your views, how your personality develops, and how you interact with different people and meet new people as well.
Absolutely, yeah. And as tough as it is, like the leaving cert, you learn a lot about yourself during that. So your son will be part of that fairly unique cohort who were one of those who actually never sat the actual exams, and now starting college, university virtually, I'd imagine, kind of from home. I remember the excitement on day one, looking forward to that myself. So that's a whole new experience and a really tough one, I would imagine.
It is really tough. Now he's adapted quite well, I must say, and what I find great is there is a little bit of structure to it in the college that he's in. So I'm really glad about that. But he isn't meeting any new people. He doesn't know anybody in his class. Now they have a couple of Zoom calls where their project groups have gotten together, but it's just not the same. And I think that experience that you have in college, where you're mixing with people that are so different to you, that actually helps you, or it forms a really good part with regard to the type of person that you become in later life as well.
Absolutely, it really does. And one thing I think is another challenge as well for organizations this time is if they're taking on graduates at this time, new recruits, especially those kind of new graduates just coming out of university who don't have the chance to kind of meet their new colleagues in person, and they're trying to get up to speed. Again, yet another awkward one, another virtual challenge that we're all facing.
Totally. Totally, and and we're the same as any other organization, and it's really that connectivity that is difficult. There's a lot of stuff that you can do, you can read, and there's a lot of theory stuff, but it is really that connectivity and feeling part of a team, and feeling part of the culture of the organization that you are working for. And it is tough. It is tough, but I really think that over the last 7 months that organizations have really adapted to the situations that they found themselves in, and I see that from AIB's perspective as well, with regard to that we've got less than 40% of our people working in the office at the minute, which again we would have never ever seen before, and it's wonderful to see how we can adopt, and even I suppose as we're talking about well-being, even to look at the way in which I know my own organisation has adopted to the way that we're delivering and highlighting the importance of well-being across AIB.
Excellent, and we'll get into that.
Yeah.
Take us back a little to what was life like at AIB, kind of one of the most recognizable brands in the country. What was that like for you pre-COVID, if you like, and tell us a little bit about your role.
Yeah, will do. So I am head of people engagement and customer services in AIB, and that role, or if I suppose just tell you a little about customer services first of all. So we're kind of the engine of AIB, and we are, I suppose, the back office of a lot of the activities that happen right across AIB, along with the contact centres fall under our remit as well. So we've got about 1,200 people that work within customer services, and we are based across a number of different locations, and we've got a very diverse working group as well. We will kind of hit all of the generations when it comes to the ages and the demographics of the different groups that we have. So as part of my role, I would be responsible for driving the wellbeing agenda along with the training and development agenda, and the engagement agenda for customer services. And a lot of that, I suppose, pre-COVID would very much have been face-to-face, kind of getting feedback from people, looking at what it is that we can do in order to help somebody develop their career, how we can provide additional training in order to be able to help them develop. From a well-being perspective, again, it was very much in the office. So we would have things like exercise classes. We would be doing talk and walk on Wednesdays. We would be doing kind of coffee mornings, bake sales, things like that. And again, very much people connecting with each other, learning from each other. And it's one thing, I suppose, that from my side, I get a huge amount of energy from being with people. So it was great on that side. So that's really the way it was beforehand, and it certainly has changed.
It has changed, and I think you have a very kind of robust wellbeing structure in there as well, if I'm not mistaken. You recently appointed a wellbeing officer, is it? And you actually have kind of a governance team and advocates as well.
Absolutely. So I suppose if we go back to the end of 2018, our very first wellbeing officer was appointed in AIB, and that was brilliant to see, because across AIB a number of pockets of wellbeing programs were beginning to sprout up, including our own one in customer services, when the wellbeing officer was appointed, it very much brought together all of those wellbeing programs, and it looked at, I suppose, everybody driving towards the same agenda. And it also meant that for the very first time, we had very strong leadership with regard to driving that agenda, and looking at, I suppose, the way in which it was. What we were looking at doing was being able to make sure that everybody across AIB had the exact same experience. So just because in one particular area you very much got senior management buy-in for wellbeing, that shouldn't mean that in another area where there isn't that same buy-in, that they're getting a different experience or no experience at all. So when the wellbeing officer was appointed, we got together as a group, and we developed a wellbeing council. And that council is responsible for driving the agenda and identifying what it is will best suit the organisation at that time. And I'll talk a little bit, I suppose, about how we reacted to COVID, and that will really show you how we gelled together in order to be able to drive a particular agenda. But what we also did at that time was we reached out to people who we knew were key advocates of wellbeing. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to create a community. And this was very much it's kind of both bottom up and top down, because by having the wellbeing officer, we certainly had the support of our exco. And then by driving it from the bottom up, it was very much giving people autonomy as well with regard to driving the agenda. And I suppose with autonomy comes ownership, and people feeling more empowered and feeling more responsible for driving the agenda. And we've seen that has been a massive success. So I'm delighted to say, I suppose now, I would say a year and a half on, we have over 100 wellbeing advocates right across AIB. And when I'm talking about AIB, I'm talking about both Ireland, Northern Ireland, Great Britain, Scotland, Wales, and also in the US, which is amazing, and we are so thrilled. And prior to COVID, we would have gotten together for those people who were available to look at some training that we could have done in order to support our advocates, looking at coming up with ideas as to what it is we would be able to drive, what agendas we'd be able to drive, or initiatives we'd be able to drive on wellbeing. And it was great because that really helped us build that sense of community and that sense of all of us working towards the same objective and same goal. And unfortunately, I suppose with COVID, we've had to adapt, and we've had to see how it is we're going to be able to drive that now and make sure that we're still staying connected and we still feel part of that community.
Excellent. Yeah, it sounds like a great community that you're building, all right. And so headed up, it's a full-time wellbeing officer.
Correct.
You have kind of an overarching a wellbeing steering committee. And then, as you mentioned, over the 100 wellbeing advocates, or some people might call them wellbeing champions, and they're kind of dotted throughout the country, different kind of levels. And I think executive sponsorship, as you mentioned as well, for all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do have executive sponsorship. So if we look at it, our chief people officer, she is absolutely 100% behind this, and drives well-being, and any of the communications that we receive from her, it's very much with well-being in mind. And also what we're looking at is that each one of our executive committee members, that they will be responsible for various elements of our wellbeing agenda. So for example, our chief financial officer, he's sponsoring our mental wellbeing stream. So that's, to have that type of backing. And I think, in any organization where we see that backing, wellbeing will be a success, because, that senior buy-in is wonderful. And I think when you have that buy-in from such senior leaders, they're actually passionate about the agenda as well. And it's not just hearsay. And they are, even if I take the example of our chief financial officer, during this month of October, he would have recorded a clip just encouraging everybody to take care, a video clip, should I say, just encouraging everybody to take care of their mental health. And that was available to everybody across AIB. And it was lovely to see that, and it was lovely to see that we have that support in order to be able to drive our wellbeing agenda. And at that time as well, he would have used that clip to launch our Time to Talk initiative, which is something that I suppose we'll have a chat about as well, Brian.
Absolutely, yeah. I was going to say this sort of senior leadership support is incredibly important, as you mentioned. And it's probably one of the most popular questions that I get asked is how do you get that senior leadership support? I don't know if that's something you had to work on. Is it something that's going to kind of develop naturally? There was kind of a natural buy-in there.
I think I'd say it developed naturally, and I think when you see the commitment that AIB have with regard to having a wellbeing officer, and you know, the wellbeing officer having access to people at such a senior level, and you know, they're so bought into the idea around the importance of wellbeing, which means that it very much did evolve naturally. And people willing to put their hands up at that senior level and say, I'm very happy to sponsor that element or that channel, or that particular initiative.
And that sponsorship and buy-in, you've kind of touched on it, but what does that look like? It's their communication, it's their participation, it's their input.
Absolutely. I think I mentioned, I suppose, even from the chief people officer, you know, we get regular communications from her, whether it be from a video clip or whether it be in an email, or even from our even from other senior people in the organization. Wellbeing will always be mentioned in any form of those communications. You know, even our CEO, very much 100% behind wellbeing, and a lot of the clips, again, that we get from him will mention wellbeing and mention, I mean, the importance of people looking after their wellbeing as well.
Really important, yeah, really good stuff. And we touched on community and kind of that social interaction that you thrive on. What have you done in recent months to promote that in the remote working environment? Have you made any changes or introduced any new initiatives through the Wellbeing Advocates?
Absolutely. So we've had lots of different things that we've done. So I suppose kind of the one that is just recently, as part of, I suppose, Mental Health Month, what we've done is we've introduced an initiative called Time to Talk. And I suppose you'll be aware that we are a distributor of green ribbons on behalf of Sea Change, and they have also have an initiative called Time to Talk. And what we wanted to do was we want people to feel empowered just to take some time out, have that virtual coffee, have that virtual walk with their colleagues, and know that there is somebody there in order to be able to support them. So what we've done is we've provided training to all of our advocates with regard to how it is you can spot somebody who's maybe having some difficulty, how you reach out to that person. And I suppose one of the most important things is how to signpost that person to the places in which they can actually find the help that they need. And that initiative as I said, it launched the beginning of this month. It was a brainchild of one of our advocates and one of our council members, and has very much been taken up by everybody across the organisation. And it's lovely to see, as was different messages with regards to what people are doing in order to take that time to talk. So that's one of our really kind of key initiatives that we have undertaken. I suppose prior to that, what we've had to do is we've had to, I suppose, adjust the channels by which we interact and we provide wellbeing support. So there's a couple of things that we kicked off. So one, we introduced a wellbeing app, which is Pep Talk, and a fantastic app where there are various different podcasts, where there are you can do exercise classes, there are live talks on various different wellbeing topics, and also there is there's areas where I suppose you can actually post some pictures as well. So we've had lots of competitions where people can post, for example, it was in way back in the beginning, it was what have you cooked, or what have your children cooked, and a baking competition. And I suppose if we looked at that in the pre-COVID days, if somebody would be tasting the food, whereas now you're looking at the picture and you're making your recommendations looking at that picture. But one of the most important things that we found in Pep Talk is that it's when our colleagues speak, or our colleagues post pictures, or our colleagues record a podcast. They're the ones that get the most views. They're the ones that people really interact with. And it is that I suppose, knowing the person, engaging with the person. And that was something very interesting to see. I suppose one of the other areas I mentioned, I suppose, the podcasts, and one of the podcasts that we've run is all around financial well-being. Because I think sometimes, we know about the physical side and we know about the mental side, but we do forget a bit about the financial side as well. And I suppose these days that's as important as anything, because it can drive the problems that people may have from a mental perspective as well. So there, one of the other things then, I suppose, was around kind of some quizzes that we had, and these would have been run at a local level with some support from the centre, the Wellbeing Centre, and they would have been, people interacting at a team level, and it was really kind of setting up those social chats as well. And so over Zoom, having a kind of a social chat, forgetting about the work element of it, and really, I suppose, staying connected the whole time.
Excellent. So quite a few kind of tools there, the app, the Zoom calls, great for communication and connection while working remotely. Sure. And I love the time to talk example. And I particularly love the fact that that's an idea or a suggestion that came from, one of the Wellbeing Advocates. That's kind of what they're there for, isn't it? They're
Absolutely.
Feedback, to make suggestions, to input into the entire process. And here's one of their brainchilds, if you like, that's come to fruition now. And I think you've got some kind of branding to go along with it as well. You've got I see, and if anyone's watching the video, you've got your pin there.
Yes.
There's also going to be a virtual background for colleagues as well.
Absolutely. And I think anybody who may have visited our branch network during October will have seen it on our digital screens. And I suppose similar to lots of other organisations, we'll have kind of our own wallpaper when we log in. And that would very much have been appearing on the very first thing that you see when you log in the morning. So again, like it was just having those, making sure that people know that initiative is there, and that it just to take time to talk and just to take time to mind yourself as well.
Time to talk, yeah, so powerful. It kind of reminds me of the Mental Health Ally program at Accenture, if you like. So similar idea, and they had some branding, and they were influenced by Sea Change also. So lots of kind of overlap there and interesting work. Can I ask about the training for your colleagues, for the advocates?
Yeah.
How did you kind of design that, or how did that come about, the actual training for the time to talk?
Yeah, so we would have worked with a college, CMIT, with regard to what it is that we wanted to actually deliver through this program. So along with that college, we would have developed the program. So it was very much looking at what are the signs that you should really be looking for. And one of the things that I found really interesting, having gone through that training, it's really noticing the change in somebody's behavior. Somebody who maybe usually is extremely chatty when they're in a meeting or on a call, and all of a sudden they're not communicating, or maybe somebody who isn't reaching out for a period of time. And it's really just, being aware of those signs, and also you taking the time to reach out to that person to make sure that they're okay. Another part of that training that I found extremely interesting as well, and I suppose it leads into the kind of D&I agenda, was really around diversity, and that if people are different for any particular reason whatsoever, the importance of them feeling included, and how by them not feeling included, the impact that it may have on their mental health. So we'll say again, we would have had both the wellbeing agenda and the D&I agenda very much to the fore. And at the end of that training, we do ask people to complete a number of quizzes, and having completed those quizzes, they will then get a certificate that will say that they have completed that program. What we have then done is that we have communicated with regard to the organisation to say that these people have received the training, and people can reach out to them if they need. And I suppose you mentioned earlier on around the advocates that they're at different levels within the organisation, or different seniority. So I may not necessarily feel comfortable reaching out to my senior leader or to my line manager, but I could feel very comfortable reaching out to a peer. Yeah. And I think that's really the power of this as well, that there is that there is such a wide and diverse group available. But I think, again, it is really important to say that all these groups are doing is that they're reaching out, they're watching for the changes, and they're signposting, and making sure then that anybody that they feel may be in difficulty, that they then making them aware of our EAP or Employee Assistance Programme, and making them aware of what is available through that.
Yeah, excellent point. Similar to mental health first aid or any of those programs, we're not training anyone up as counsellors. It's the signposting piece, it's the listening piece, and being aware of the resources that are available that they can point people towards.
Exactly. And I think one of the things also that's very important is not trying to solve somebody's problem. And the words that you use when you're talking to somebody who may be experiencing a problem. Yeah. It's no point in telling somebody, oh, you'll get over it, because you just don't know. And that's probably something that they really don't want to hear, because they probably heard it lots of times before. So again, as part of the training that our advocates would have gotten, it is kind of things around body language when you're talking to somebody, the words that you use, and certainly the words not to use.
Yeah, really good point. It sounds like a powerful, and important training. It's so the advocates have gone through it around 120 or so. Mm-hmm. Are there plans to expand it further, do you think, or is it something that you'll think is just for the advocates for now?
No, it's certainly something that we're looking at expanding. We have taken just some time now to evaluate the programme, get some feedback from our advocates. We have had a number of requests from people who aren't advocates to attend the training, and that is something that we're definitely looking at. I know from my own perspective, I'd love a number of my own people leaders to go through the programme, because I think we're all in a situation at the minute where we're not as connected as what we used to be. We're not seeing the signs, the body language in the same way, and I think sometimes people can get a little bit lost. So I do think it's very important for every people leader to go through something like this, whether it's full training or whether it's something a little bit lighter. We really do need to, we are having a look at that to see what it is we can best offer to people.
Very good. Yeah, very good. And so the advocates, it seems like they're certainly involved in a lot of activities. Mm-hmm. I believe you're considering, or you're looking at the potential for 2021 and perhaps beyond, that wellbeing can be included in their objectives.
Yeah, and I suppose that's something that we're looking at the minute. The advocates are doing such amazing work, and sometimes, I suppose one of the things that I hadn't pointed out in the beginning is that the advocates, this is only a very small part of their job, and in fact, a lot of them, it doesn't form an official part of their role. They have a very important role to do for our customers right across the organisation. So one of the things that we really want to look at is that how do we recognise the importance of the work that our advocates are doing, and whether that's through, I suppose, objectives. We really have to assess that, but we really feel it's terribly important that work is recognised. And if we look at how powerful the advocates have been right throughout the last 7 months, and the various different kind of initiatives that they've run, I suppose even kind of they get involved in things like fundraising from an advocate side as well, and it's really keeping people engaged during this time, and we really feel it is terribly important that they get recognised for that.
I agree with you 100%, and it's not something I've come across in Ireland as yet. I know some US organisations are kind of formally recognising wellbeing. It's one of the almost like performance objectives, if you like. For leaders. I think it's mainly people managers. So it would be great to see that some Irish organisations, perhaps the CCPC, have something going on, but I don't know anything formally recognised. So it'd be really interesting to hear how your own kind of conversations go in that regard.
Absolutely, and it is like it's a work in progress. I think you know, if you and I were having a conversation about well-being 18 months, 2 years ago, it would be very different, I think. I mean, it's amazing how far we've come in the last number of years. And, you know, I look back to when customer services set up their well-being program. It was really around kind of tackling absence in some ways. And then we very quickly realized that, you know, it's much bigger than that. You know, it's really around providing, I suppose it's an employee proposition, really. And it's, I suppose, if you look at all of the research, and you look at people who are looking at roles in organizations and what is it that attracts somebody to an organization, a lot of the time it'll look at their well-being proposition, their D&I proposition, their social, I always get this one wrong.
Corporate social responsibility.
That's right, yes, exactly. So, you know, it just shows how we've evolved, and I hope we continue to evolve and to recognise and just acknowledge the work that our advocates do on a daily basis.
It really is an important consideration, isn't it, for those coming through the workforce now?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, a really important consideration. We've spoken about what life was like pre-COVID. We've spoken about how you've adapted. Any thoughts on what the future might look like if you had your crystal ball there? What would the future of work look like in 6 months, in 12 months' time?
I know it's a really weird one, isn't it? And I suppose I did mention that AIB have 40% of their people in the office at the minute, and you know, we are viewed to be essential workers, and I mean, our contact centres, our guys in our branches, like, they're doing amazing work in order to be able to service our customers, keep the lights on, and you know, I think it's so important to call that out and to thank every one of them for the work that they're doing. But I suppose if we were to look at what the future of working is going to be, I think interestingly, AIB we have recently surveyed all of their staff with regard to what it is, how is it that they see their work life playing out, and about 80% of them have come back to say that they'd like to see a blended approach, where people could come into the office sometimes and they can work from home sometimes. So I really think that that's the way things are going to go. It'll very much be blended, and that you know, people will they'll come to the office for various things, and I think there will be, you know, we're never going to have a situation where people who work in our branch network are going to be able to work from home. So we will have that whole blended approach, depending on the role, I suppose, that you're undertaking.
Yeah, and you know, Tracy Carey was on the podcast recently, and she said almost something identical to yourself there. I think it was the 80% as well, that we're looking for that blended approach. So the idea, maybe 2 or 3 days in the office, 1 or 2 days then from home as well on top of that. Yeah,
exactly. And I think, you know, if you even look at talking to people, you know, particularly around now the work-life balance and not having to do that commute, and I suppose, you know, it's awful important then that people who are spending that time at home, that they do kind of log off, that they do kind of disconnect at the end of the day, because I know for myself at the beginning, I was set up in the dining room, as I said, and like every time I came into the dining room, I thought of work, which, you know, that isn't good. So it is so important. And again, I mean, given we're talking about well-being, it is so important for all parts of your well-being, for you to have that break, you know, to try and compartmentalize your work day and your home day as well.
Sure. And speaking of that disconnect, if I'm not mistaken, I saw in the news very recently, AIB, are they the first company in Ireland to introduce a policy on that the right to disconnect?
Well, we've recently introduced that. We actually introduced it during the summer, and we worked with regard to launching that right to disconnect policy, and it's very much around like. So I think we'll all agree that I mean, our phones are stuck to our hands, and we're constantly looking at our emails. And what we're encouraging is people are empowered to take their lunch breaks, go for a walk, to disconnect. And I suppose one interesting thing that I've seen in a number of emails that I've gotten from colleagues is around flexible hours, and people who may not now be doing the normal 9 to 5, and what they have at the end of their email is that I'm now working flexibly. So if I respond outside of, or if I mail you outside of your normal working hours, please, you don't have to come back to me until you are actually working. So that is a really good thing. And I think as well, it's just empowering people with regard to not feeling that they always have to be switched on to work, and that they can take that day off, they can take that hour off, and just give themselves some time away from work.
Yeah, it's definitely a positive step and empowering, as you said. I think France were the first country in the world to introduce. It's illegal right now. It's in law in France. The right to disconnect. So great, and I know it was being discussed in the Dáil pre-COVID. Certainly, I don't know if it's made any progress. That actual bill. So, but great to see AIB take the lead and actually bring that in. So, just interesting to see how that kind of settles down over the coming months and years. But I think it's definitely a positive step.
And I think each one of us have a responsibility to make sure that we do that. Absolutely. And we have to lead by example. Senior leaders within the organisation, our wellbeing advocates, our wellbeing council. We do have to lead by example, and we need to make sure that we are following that policy as well.
Well, it's a really great point, because the leading by example is so important here, isn't it? I mean, if we're going to send that email at 11 p.m. at night, we're a senior leader. There's always that option to check to schedule it for 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. the next morning. This kind of idea, because people do, even they might just see it, they might feel under pressure to respond if they do see it. So we do have that option ourselves. Exactly,
and I think we do need to take ownership. Look, I'm as guilty as the next person, and I have had to have kind of serious conversations with myself to say, put that away. Again, I honestly believe it's a habit too, because it's always there. And what is it? What do they say? How long does it take you to break a habit? So it is really, we do have to kind of, as I said, lead by example.
Yeah, lead by example, model healthy behaviors.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, we've concentrated mostly on the organization, which has been incredibly interesting. What about yourself, Toni? Are you doing anything yourself to look after your own well-being at this moment in time?
Well, I was, before COVID, I do a lot of walking. So kind of I continue to do that walking. So, my routine is I still get up at the same time. I take my dog for a walk in the morning, and I must say, I'm really lucky. I have an amazing park just beside me. And it's kind of this both wide open spaces, and there's a fabulous forest and a river that runs through it. And I must say, during COVID, it was the one thing that really struck me. It was just the quietness. You could hear the river. It was fabulous. And I come from the middle of the country originally, a long time ago. And it's that silence that you're used to when you live in the country. It just really brought it all back to me. And it was lovely. But I suppose, I certainly need to get out. I need to get the fresh air. And that's something that I haven't stopped in any way. Hail, rain or snow. My husband is saying to me that, you're mad going out there, but it just helps me just clear the mind. I suppose I've kind of reconnected with a lot of people that I may not have been in contact with for a long time. And that has been great. So it has. And also it was similar to everybody, you know, I'm doing the family Zoom calls. My family are kind of dispersed across the world, and I've missed not seeing my sisters who are living abroad. You know, like we would have seen them during the summer, we would be looking forward to Christmas together, and it doesn't look like that. Well, it didn't happen during the summer, and it doesn't look like it's going to happen for Christmas. But that Zoom that we're all getting so used to, that has really helped, and it's great to be able to connect to them like that. So they're kind of the things that I've been doing. I haven't done any baking, I'll be very honest. I haven't done any painting, but I just love the fresh air, and I just love to be able to get out and just spend that time outside.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm lucky enough to live beside a couple of parks as well. It's just been so important in my daily routine. You mentioned routine's so important, just to get out there, to get some fresh air. Mm-hmm. And yeah, get into a bit of nature if you can. And exactly. I heard on the radio this morning, actually, some really positive kind of statistics on the amount of people that are actually out walking. It's like it's something like a 20% increase over the last 6 months or so. So a lot of people are seeing the positives in this and getting outdoors.
I'll tell you, the park was fairly busy this morning, and I was really surprised. Oh, yeah. And as you're walking past people, you can actually hear them saying, "It's very busy here this morning." But no, it is. And one other thing I suppose that I've kind of taken up is we used to have exercise classes which were run in the office, and they've now gone virtually. So I try and do maybe 1 or 2 classes during the week with my camera off, because I'm telling you, they barely push you. So that's just been something else I've taken up recently.
That's great. I mean, Zoom is so good, isn't it? You can connect in so many ways, as you mentioned, kind of rekindling with some old friends or family, distant family, and then also you can actually get a bit of a virtual workout in with the camera on or off.
Oh yeah, no, I'm definitely off, Brian.
You're an off person. Fair enough. Well, listen, Toni, you've been so good today, sharing all those details, all that information. Where can people go to find out more about yourself and the work that you're doing?
Well, you'll find me on LinkedIn, and Brian is probably the best place if anybody wants to connect.
Excellent. We'll share those details. Listen, Toni, thanks so much again.
Brian, thanks a million.
Take care.
Great to talk.
Take care and stay safe.
You too.